Okay, some basics here. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Who thinks the chicken came first? Who thinks the egg came first? Okay, why do you think the chicken? There you go. I didn't know that till I was 32. So thank God you guys are getting a Christian education, because I didn't get that. I was halfway done with my life before I heard somebody say, you know what God said? He made the birds, not the eggs, the chicken. So there you go. And then last time I was here, I think I gave you a question of what you can ask an atheist. If somebody says he doesn't believe in God, do you remember the question that you're supposed to ask him? You ask him this one: how did life begin? Okay, everybody say that. 1, 2, 3.
How did life begin?
One more time.
How did life begin?
That's right, because they can't answer it. And they have just as much faith, if not more faith, than we do. They believe life just pops into existence. They believe that hydrogen and helium from the Big Bang turns into people. That's just crazy, and I don't have enough faith. And there's a debate out there on YouTube called Bill Nye the Science, it's the creation debate. Bill Nye the Science Guy. Anybody ever heard of him? Bill Nye Science Guy. Okay, Ken Am, ever heard of him? Oh, look at the hands go higher for that one. Good. They had a debate, and there was a question that came to Bill Nye, and it said, where did the matter come from the Big Bang? And Bill Nye says, don't know, it's a mystery, that's why we do science. And then Ken Ham says, well, Bill, there's a book that says where we got the matter from. And then the very next question was, how did consciousness come from matter? Don't know, it's a mystery. Well, Bill, there's a book that tells us where that came from. And there's a battle going on out there, and you want to know which side people are on. And a real simple question for that is, hey, where did people come from? If they point you to Adam and Eve, they believe what God said. If they don't point you to Adam and Eve, then they don't believe what God said. And if they don't believe what God said, be real careful about believing anything they say. And another question, hey, when did dinosaurs live? Who thinks they lived billions of years ago? Who thinks they lived millions of years ago? Who thinks they lived thousands of years ago? Okay. Yeah, and this question, I asked that at a Christian event. It was called Celebrate Minnesota. And 80 people said millions and 50 people said thousands. And even at Bethel University, I did the same survey, and it was like 15 said millions and 4 or 5 said thousands. And the Bible says clearly that how can you have dinosaurs millions of years ago when God made the earth roughly 6,000 years ago? So there's different perspectives, and it all comes down to different perspectives of the past. Okay, one perspective is based on blind chance and random collisions of atoms, like the Big Bang and evolution. That's like they thinking this building got put together by chance. Does anybody believe that? Well, how much more absurd is it to think your body got put together by chance? So that perspective of the past is wrong. There's another perspective of the past where there's a creator and a designer who revealed himself in a book, and that fits the science perfectly. Perfectly. And we have to if we don't get our perspective of the past right, we're going to have the wrong perception of the present and the wrong focus in the future. And thank God you guys are getting the right perspective of the past. So blind chance, they can't answer any of this without breaking laws of physics. Matter from nothing violates the law of physics, life from non-life, and it just goes on and on. But a biblical view of this is astronomy. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and he stretched out the heavens. You know, he made a greater light to rule the day and a lesser light to rule the night, and he made the stars also. That's astronomy. And and then geology. There was a worldwide flood. That's where we get our fossils. That's where we get the layers of sedimentary rock. That's not millions of years. And then biology. Everything produces after their kind. That's what it tells us. And that's what we see out there. Dogs produce dogs. Cats produce cats. People produce people. It fits what the Bible says. And it also said the seed is in itself. Those are biological statements. So when the Bible talks about science, it's right. And then anthropology. Where did all the people groups come from? I never refer to people as races. There's only one race, the human race. And so when I fill out a form that says what race, I just check other, and I'll put human. It's like, quit dividing us. And so where did the people groups come from? That's Genesis 11. That's the Tower of Babel. That's when God confounded their languages and scattered them across the face of the earth, and isolated populations get different features. Okay, that's the foundation. Now we're going on to Creation Science 102. This is fishing holes for kids. Who likes to fish? Who likes to catch a lot of fish? Okay, well, if I came here and gave you a fish, you can eat for a day. But if I teach you how to fish and show you where the fishing holes are, now you can eat for a lifetime. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you where the good fishing holes are. There's a lot of good websites out there, and they're on this list. And if you brought a pen and a paper, you're going to have the easiest job. Anybody ever heard of Cisco and Ebert? They were movie critics. It was the easiest job in the world. They'd watch a movie and then they'd say, like it, don't like it. That was it. And they'd be on TV. And that's what you're going to do on these clips. You're going to go thumbs up or thumbs down. And we'll try and figure out which one of these creation organizations has the best clips. And you'll be able to see these. I've got these. This is my YouTube channel. It's Solidify Your Faith. And we're doing a Creation Science 101 series. And 101 was the basics. 102 is what we're doing today, the basics, showing you where the fishing holes is. 103 is the age of the earth. And 104 is a bunch of frauds that were just released last month. And so you can check into that, and it's free. And okay, now where did God come from? We're going to show you 2 clips. And if you want, you can rate one or 2, but put the biggest number first. Number 1 will be, well, whatever. Just rank them however you want. And this is how Science Uprising is going to give us an overview. This is scienceuprising.com. So if you can find it on your sheet, you're going to put arrow up or arrow down after it's done.
Modified monkeys? Is that what we are? Or is it just a mask some scientists want us to wear?
The origin of life community has not been honest.
Materialists understand that materialism cannot explain the mind.
Who am I?
Rather than abandoning materialism, they abandon the mind.
Our planet has water and carbon, both necessary for life. So the Earth is exceedingly rare.
You get many people deceived, thinking that life has been all but made.
We come up the way, out of space, we'll show you the way, out of here.
There exists a code so complex and advanced that it defies the probability of chance.
When we see information in software and we trace that information back to its source,
The way, out of space, we'll show you the way.
we always come to a mind as part of what we know from our observation of the world around us. That information always arises from an intelligent source.
I play that at St. Cloud State on my Bluetooth speaker. Students are walking by and I'll play that. They have an old earth perspective. So again, with all of these, eat the meat, spit out the bones. They make some really good intelligent design arguments. And I'll play this one too. This is from debunked.org. And again, eat the meat, spit out the bones. But this is one that I play this at St. Cloud State too. This is number 1 and number 25 and number 16 I think are really good. But here's their perspective of God.
Lots of people say there's no evidence for God. Well, we're going to knock that one out in 3. I'm just going to have to keep it simple, throw in the old 1-2 combo, get in and out real quick, and let you fine folks chat all about it, okay? Punch 1 I'm going to call the info uppercut. When's the last time you walked into a library and asked, hey, where are all the books that have been written by mindless products of natural laws? The librarian would probably laugh at you and tell you that no such books exist. And they don't exist because they can't exist. Why not? Because first of all, it's just common sense. The words that form the message in books always originate from a person with a brain. Or to say it a bit more scientifically, the message of the book, the purpose, comes to be understood by the orderly placement of the words, design, and information. Ah, information. Now, anytime we find info, these basic laws always apply. Number 1, matter doesn't spontaneously produce information. Number 2, only a mental source, intelligence, can generate new creative information. In other words, just like those books that couldn't originate without a mind, neither could life. Why not, you ask? Because we know that DNA contains information. Therefore, the laws of information science apply, which means the information in DNA couldn't have spontaneously generated, and that a mind is behind the information. Period. No exceptions. Look at it this way. The simplest life form we know of is an amoeba, and it contains as much information in its DNA as 1,000 complete sets of Encyclopedia Britannica. So, are we to believe that there's no way a message in a library book could spontaneously generate, but far more complicated messages in DNA that contain 1,000 times more information could have? Not likely. You see, when it comes to life or anything else that contains information, the laws of information science confirm the necessity of a creative mind. And guess what? In the very first book of the Bible, it just happens to mention that. In the beginning, God created. Bam! Uppercut lands on the chin. And now here comes the indefensible head blow. We'll call this the Nada Big Bang Bing swing, the KO to the claim that there's no evidence of God, the law of causality, left hook of doom. It goes like this. Everything that had a beginning had a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe had a cause. Now, either something caused the universe to come into existence, or nothing caused it. I might not be the smartest guy behind the telescope, but honest, practical, everyday thinking's going to lead me to the latter. You have to work pretty hard to conjure up a way that nothing did it. You see, it's pretty improbable, nigh impossible, to account for design, information, and cause if the universe just exploded from nothing. Smack! And while we're on the topic, where did the matter come from that exploded? Are we really to believe that there was nothing and then it exploded, and now the exploded nothing is something, and we just happen to be smart enough to discover and understand the very laws that prove the opposite? And if the general understanding of the law of cause and effect is true, how can matter come from a lesser cause like nothing? I mean, come on. I don't have a bunch of letters after my name, but even a monkey knows better. And yeah, I snuck in a couple of extra jabs in there, so sue me. Now for some parting words from our sponsor, the Bible. It tells us in Romans 1:20 that since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. It also says that people actually know the truth, but they reject it, which explains why even though there's overwhelming evidence that there is a God, evidence won't convince the unwilling. Sad but true. So there you have it. With just a couple of meaningful blows, the claim that there is no evidence for God is down for the count, mi amigos. In other words, it's been debunked. Adios. This video is fully funded by a generous donation. To keep debunked videos free, please consider a tax-deductible donation or reach out to us to sponsor a video.
Adios. So in just a couple of minutes, you can do thumbs up or thumbs down, arrow up or arrow down. So just in a few minutes, they talked on information science. You know, it's got to come from a mind. And they also covered the law of causality. Something had to cause the universe. And now we're going to move on to the universe. This is ICR's, now ICR.org. You go into ICR.org, you hit the media button and go down to That's a Fact.
How did the universe begin? Some people say that it came into existence billions of years ago in a massive explosion, but this Big Bang has some big problems. First, the antimatter problem. Whenever scientists convert energy into matter, they get equal amounts of matter and antimatter. Antimatter particles have the same mass but opposite charge. Supposedly, the Big Bang converted energy into equal amounts of matter and antimatter, but the universe shows no sign of this expected antimatter. Second is the horizon problem. The Big Bang model says that the universe started out very small and rapidly expanded. This would leave huge hot and cold spots since even a 13 billion-year-old universe is still too young for temperatures to level out. But the actual universe shows temperatures remarkably the same in all directions, no hot or cold spots. Mature galaxies pose a third problem. Light from the farthest galaxies we see supposedly took billions of years to get to Earth. So those distant galaxies should still appear undeveloped and chaotic, as they would have after the Big Bang. But distant galaxies look fully mature, not haphazard like the Big Bang predicted. Even the very distant regions of the universe reveal galaxies of magnificent beauty and complexity. In addition to these scientific problems, the Big Bang contradicts the Bible. The Big Bang needs billions of years, but God's Word describes the beginning of the universe happening in just 6 days only thousands of years ago. The Big Bang teaches that the sun and stars formed before the Earth, but the Bible says the opposite. Not by some problem-riddled explosion, but by the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth.
So that was ICR. You get to see about that. You can thumb up or thumb down that thing. And they said that the energy turned into matter. My question would be, well, hey, where did the energy come from? You got to get it from somewhere. Where did that start? Okay, that was ICR. This one's going to be Creation Minute, or Creation Today, where he's going to mock the evolutionary formula. Everybody ready? Cisco and Eberts are ready? Okay, here's Creation Today, Creation Minute.
Welcome to Creation Minute. I'm Eric Hovind. Today, let me give you the evolutionary formula to make a universe. Start with some nothing. Add to that some more nothing. Then let's add some time. Let's add some more time. We've got it. It's a perfectly balanced universe. Look at that sun, moon, stars, planets. Everything's orbiting in perfect balance and order. You know, evolutionists theorize that this formula can enable everything to make itself. Even people, with the exception of complicated man-made things like a microscope or a toothpick, but everything else about us in nature is the result of random chance and time. You don't even need raw materials. Those will make themselves. To learn more about creation, visit us at creationminute.com.
So that's Eric Hovind, and he's mocking their theory in a way. It's like nothing plus nothing equals everything, and we're supposed to believe that. So yeah, and that's thumbs up or thumbs down. That's Creation Today, or Creation Minute. And when you're ready, we're going to go on to the age of the Earth. And there's four. We're going to look at 4 of them on this one. All right, the age of the Earth, we'll have Eric explain this one.
How old is the Earth? Evolutionists claim it's 4.6 billion years old. But what does the evidence say? Let's take a look. There are so many evidences of a young Earth. The Methuselah tree, the Great Barrier Reef, erosion rates. Continents are eroding at a rate that would level them in just 25 million years. We've got comets in our solar system, but they only last 100,000 years. Why do we still have comets? Sahara Desert is growing, oil is still under pressure, Earth's magnetic field is actually getting weaker, putting a maximum age of 25,000 years on it. Earth's rotation is slowing down, the moon is receding, the human population is at 6.5 billion. Trace that backwards, it all started 4,400 years ago, right when the Bible says the flood occurred. Why? Because the Earth is young, not old. To learn more about creation, visit us at creationminute.com.
There they just showed how this place cannot be millions or billions of years old. And so we're hitting a lot of the high points. This is ICR's attempt at it.
Each year, it's fun to celebrate birthdays. And to be certain of our age, we can always check our birth certificate. But can any reliable methods determine the age of an object without a historical record? Radiocarbon dating measures the ratio of radioactive carbon-14 to stable carbon-12 in an organic artifact like wood or bone. The method assumes how much carbon-14 was present when the tree or animal died and how fast carbon-14 decays in order to calculate how old something is. Because carbon-14 completely decays in thousands of years, it should only be useful to date objects no more than tens of thousands of years old. However, using this method, scientists determined that samples from U.S. coal beds conventionally dated at 40 to 329 million years had carbon ages of 48,000 to 50,000 years. Diamonds are said to be billions of years old, but they still have carbon-14 in them and return to ages of about 55,000 carbon years. And supposedly millions of years old dinosaur bones and other fossils show dates in the tens of thousands of carbon years. Radioisotope and radiocarbon ages can clearly contradict one another, so how can we know which method to trust? Measuring isotopes is very accurate, but the assumptions needed to convert those measurements into ages can't be verified. After all, how can anyone today verify how much of each isotope was in a rock or fossil when it formed long ago, or that no isotopes entered or left? Carbon-14 and radioisotope dates rarely match an object's real calendar age. But because the Bible is like a birth certificate for the world, resolving Earth's age is a piece of cake.
So carbon dating is actually a creationist friend because they find carbon-14 in diamonds, coal, oil, fossils, and that shows they're not millions of years old. And this one I really want you to pay attention for. This is Genesis Apologetics, and this is a classroom setting. And I think asking questions is so important. When they're talking about evolution, ask questions like this guy.
This is just a pack of lies.
What are you saying?
No respectable scholars today believe the Bible is accurate or that the resurrection ever happened. Yes?
Actually, a lot of scholars regard the Bible as credible. It's 66 books, written over 2 millennia with 35 different authors in 3 different languages, and it is incredibly reliable and consistent. We have over 5,000 New Testament manuscripts, and that's more than any ancient text, and these copies are overwhelmingly similar. Matthew, Mark, and John, for instance, they are direct eyewitness testimonies about Jesus' life. 11 of the 12 disciples died terrible deaths for what they believed about Christ's life and his resurrection. They believed so much that Jesus was who he said he was, that they signed their testimonies with their blood. Who would die for a resurrection that never happened?
I hadn't thought of it that way before.
And that's what we need. We need more people like that, being able to articulate why the Bible's true, why the age of the earth matters.
I was just saying that it really doesn't matter what you believe from the Bible about the age of the earth. Yes.
Actually, I think it does. See, because it's talking about God's character and about, whether we can even trust the Bible for its word. See, what it says is that God created a perfect world where he told animals and people to only eat plants. And then he told Adam and Eve that if they eat from the forbidden tree, then death would enter the world. They ate, and so death enters the world through pain, bloodshed, suffering, right? So that puts it on us, not on God. But if you add millions of years, well, then that means that God's very good creation was built upon death, pain, and suffering. Ultimately, many Christians believe that Jesus turned water into wine and that he raised Lazarus up from the dead, but they don't believe God's word whenever he says that he created the world how he did. If you ask me, I would say that if you want a strong faith with deep roots, then you should trust God's word from the beginning.
Because if the earth is billions of years old, then God used death to bring people into the world, and that's not very good. And so the age of the earth does matter, because if that's the case, then why did Jesus die on the cross, if death was always here? So, but yeah, we need to be equipped and articulate it. And this one is Answers in Genesis. This is Check This Out.
Nearly every textbook and science magazine teaches that the Earth is billions of years old, and the primary dating method used for determining this is what is called radioisotope dating, or radiometric dating. Now, this is a reliable method for measuring absolute ages of rocks and the age of the Earth, right? First off, many scientists now regard the age of the Earth to be between 4.55 and 4.6 billion years old. Okay. So if this method is reliable and accurate, why the 50 million year discrepancy? That seems like a lot. But let's get into some details here and see what's going on. Keep in mind that there's all kinds of scientific jargon on this topic, and so we'll just present a very straightforward, simplified version of the process. Radiometric dating is the process of estimating the ages of rocks based on the decay of radioactive elements in them. Basically, there are certain kinds of atoms in nature that are unstable and spontaneously decay into other kinds of atoms. For instance, uranium will radioactively decay through a series of steps until it becomes the stable element called lead. The original element is called the parent element, and the end result is called the daughter element. Radioisotope dating is commonly used to date igneous rocks, rocks which formed when hot molten material cooled and solidified. The dating clock started when the rock cooled. During the molten state, it is assumed that the intense heat forced any gaseous daughter elements to escape. It is assumed that once the rock cooled, no more atoms escaped, and any daughter element now found in the rock is a result of radioactive decay since that rock formed. The decay rate is measured in terms of half-life, that is, the length of time it takes half of the remaining atoms of a radioactive parent element to decay. Now, of course, that can be measured in a laboratory, and it is assumed that since we know the decay rate, we can calculate backwards and come up with the age of the rock. But is that all there is to it? Here's where it gets tricky. It's true we can measure a decay rate using observational science, but there's another kind of science that is required to accurately calculate dates for rocks, and that is what we call historical science. Historical science deals with the things in the past, and therefore it cannot be repeated and tested. Dating methods require both types of science, because in order to get accurate rock dates, one would have to accurately know both the decay rate and the initial conditions of the rock sample, right? Since radioisotope dating uses both types of science, we can't directly measure the ages of rocks. There are assumptions involved. For instance, how do we know what the initial conditions were in the rock sample? How do we know the amounts of parent or daughter elements now in that sample haven't been altered by other processes in the past? How does someone know the decay rate has remained constant since the rock formed? The answer is they don't.
And now we're going to get to Lucy. Lucy, our supposed ape-like ancestor. And that's what they taught me when I was a freshman at St. Cloud State. They were talking about Lucy, and I raised my hand. I wasn't a Christian then, or I didn't understand the Bible. I didn't know what the gospel was. Certainly wasn't a creationist. And I asked, hey, what difference does it make? We're here, we're now, who cares? And she said it makes a difference to some people. Well, I'm here to tell you it makes a difference to all people. Because if Lucy is true, then the Bible's false. But if Lucy's false, they're lying to us. And there's a table full of lies out there. The grand experiment, there's a lot of lies, and we need to be able to separate them. But this is Genesis apologetics. This is their attempt to explain Lucy and the lies.
How do you go from hundreds of bone fragments to 47 skeleton bones to a missing link that supposedly lived 3 million years ago named Lucy? In school textbooks across the country, Lucy is represented as a clear ape-to-human transition, walking upright, holding babies, and gazing intelligently as she walks. This teaching sows seeds of doubts in the minds of Christian students, leading them to believe that the biblical creation account is based on far-fetched fantasies. But is this really true? Is Lucy really our early human ancestor? Well, let's take a look at the evidence from head to toe. Made of hundreds of bone fragments glued together to make 47 parts, even accidentally including a vertebrae from a different species, do we really know what she was? Her skull, inner ears, locking wrist, curved fingers, and short legs reveal that she was definitely an ape. But that's not what evolutionists want you to think. Shown with human expressions, eye whites, which no apes have, and walking upright, they want you to think she was on her way to becoming human. The truth is, we were created in the image of God, and not in the image of apes, out of the dust of the earth, and given the dominion charge to rule over all of God's creation. That's why we put apes in the zoo, and not the other way around. We sing, worship, have ceremonies, pray, educate ourselves, and do so many other things that reflect the fact that we are spiritual beings and not animals. See more on this topic and others at debunkevolution.com.
Yeah, so you're getting a lot of information here in just a few minutes. A lot of that stuff isn't in the textbooks. Trust me, I've looked. A lot of that stuff isn't in the museums. And so you need to know that. And here's another classroom session.
We know our early ancestors, like Lucy, were walking upright because we found her footprints in Tanzania.
Wait a minute, weren't those footprints like 1,000 miles away from where Lucy was found?
Yeah, give or take.
Well, how big were her foot fossils?
Well, they didn't actually find Lucy's hands or feet.
Well, so how big were the actual Tanzania footprints?
About 10 inches long.
That's how big my feet are, and I only wear 9.5.
So wait a minute, so they never found her feet, but Lucy, a 3.5-foot tall person, made 10-inch long footprints 1,000 miles away? If you ask me, it sounds like the story that Lucy walked upright is lacking some evidence based on the Tanzania footprints.
Yeah, that's how it should be in class. You'll get all the information on the table, not just what they're trying to promote, but that means you have to educate yourself, especially if you're in a public school, because they aren't going to, that's why I go to St. Cloud State so much. They ask me, what are you doing here? It's like, I just want to give you an opportunity to think. You need to see both sides if you want to think, and you're not getting both sides. Now, you guys here, praise God for that, but a lot of people aren't. And this is more in depth on Lucy here. This is another one of the debunked ones.
When it comes to so-called missing links between apes and humans, there's one that stands head and hairy shoulders above the rest. And I mean that figuratively because it was speculated to only be a little over 3 feet tall when alive. And I'm referring to none other than Australopithecus afarensis, my friend and yours, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Well, that's where the name came from, but it's just plain Lucy to you and me, and it's got some splaining to do because it ain't all it's cracked up to be. And I mean that literally. First of all, this highfalutin technical name simply means southern ape from the Afar region, which is about the only thing they say that's accurate when it comes to this supposed hirsute hominid, as all kinds of creative and fanciful things happen along the way to make Lucy into the ultimate missing link. But before I go there, let's just take a quick look at how Lucy is often depicted. Here you go, one right from a museum right there, another right from a textbook. Wow, look at her smiling and walking just like you and me. Now, did someone snap a photo of Lucy and the gang back then? I mean, is this how they found Lucy, walking around, waving at him with a cute little smirk? Of course not. So then how did this artist come up with this rendering? Well, who knows exactly, but let me tell you how it all started. Way back in 1974, paleoanthropologist Donald Johanson and his team discovered Lucy in the Afar region of Ethiopia. Or more accurately, I should say, they discovered less than 30% of Lucy's fossilized bones. That's right, 70% of Lucy gone, not found. Well, wait a second then. What specific bones were found that convinced some scientists that Lucy walked upright? It must be at least the feet and the hips, right? Indeed, my friends, you're so right. You're so smart. So let's take a look at the feet and the hips. Now, the main evidence supporting the belief that this southern ape walked upright is that they found, now get this, human footprints in Tanzania, Africa in 1978. Now, you heard that right. 4 years after, and hundreds of miles away from where Lucy was found, they found human footprints, which of course means they must have been Lucy's. Huh? Not really convincing, especially when you consider the bones of Lucy that they did find did not include foot bones. What? Yeah, no foot bones, as in zero, zilch, nada, none, zippo. So if you don't have Lucy's foot bones, how do you know the human footprints hundreds of miles away were Lucy's? Well, maybe it's because they found other foot fossils they claim to be from Lucy's relatives. Only problem there is the toes were more curved than a chimpanzee's. That means the actual fossil evidence shows Lucy's family could not have made the human footprints. I don't know. Call us science deniers if that makes you feel better. But if the shoe fits, I mean, if the glove doesn't fit, you must. Nope. I mean, if the bones don't fit, well, whatever. Anyway, what about the hip? That's really going to prove Lucy walked upright like our rendering depicts, right? Well, you're going to love this part of the story, but before I go there, I got to throw 2 more facts at you for color and clarity. Fact 1, after 40 years of research, Swiss scientists discovered something very surprising about Lucy. She ain't a she. He's a he. Or like they might say in California, Lucy's a dude, bro. So, question. How in the world did the earlier, nearly infallible scientists who were proclaiming Lucy as the unmistakable, irrefutable missing link miss this? I mean, this was pre-2020, and everybody knew the difference between men and women back then. Oops, probably shouldn't have said that. Fact dose. After making this discovery, scientists suggested a new name for Lucy. They suggested Lucifer. I am not kidding. And quite honestly, it's fitting because this set of bones has been used to lie to more people than just about any other in recent decades. Now, back to the great story that I call the hip bone manipulator. DJ said these very words about Lucy's hip bone after he discovered it. Superficially, her hip resembled a chimpanzee's, which meant that Lucy couldn't possibly have walked like a modern human. Yeah, I know he said her, but that's before he knew she was a he. I don't know, very confusing. Anyway, if Lucifer's hips flared out like a chimp's, making it so that it couldn't walk upright, what happened to change the hips so that what you see in museums and publications look like human hips? Man, you guys asked the best questions, and here's the answer. Owen Lovejoy, an anthropologist, made a copy of the hip bones in plaster and then, and I quote, cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. He did what now? Like I said, you're going to love this part of the story. He cut and put them back together. Now, how did he know that's the way the hip was before Lucy died? I mean, why did he take a hip that, quote, resembled a chimpanzee's and then rearrange, literally saw, cut, and reconstruct things to make it appear like a human hip? Well, that I'll leave for you to contemplate. But at least we now know that the foundation of the artist's rendering of AL 288-1, nicknamed Lucy, aka Lucifer the ape-like beast, is completely unfounded because there's no real evidence that he, she, it, whatever the preferred pronoun might be, walked upright. Probably shouldn't have said that either. Anyway, the point is this manufactured missing link, this unfounded depiction of Lucifer walking upright and smiling, this suspicious reconstruction of the hip, this incomplete bag of bones with no feet, and this embarrassing misgendering mistake pretty much demonstrate the claim that Lucy is the real deal has been, humanly speaking, debunked. Adios.
Debunked. Yeah, they do a real good job getting a lot of information out there. And actually, I'll show you what they did to Lucy's hip. This is on my YouTube channel, Solidify Your Faith, and it's under Lies of Evolution. If you search that, you'll get to see this.
The perfect fit was an illusion that made Lucy's hip bones seem to flare out like a chimp's. But all was not lost.
Yeah, and I was at a kiosk one time. The anthropology department was right next to me, and I told them they cut Lucy's hip and twisted it and put it back, and she said, no, they didn't. I said, sure they did. You want to see it? I got it on my computer right here. She said, no, I don't want to see it. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. And so this is what they did.
Lovejoy decided he could restore the pelvis to its natural shape. He didn't want to tamper with the original, so he made a copy in plaster. He cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. It was a tricky job, but after taking the kink out of the pelvis, it all fit together perfectly, like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. As a result, the angle of the hip looks nothing like a chimp's, but a lot like ours.
So you got the idea. Instead of changing the theory to fit the facts, they changed the facts to fit the theory. And that's not the only time. We'll get to another one. But what do you do in class?
Artie is significant because we believe she walked upright based on where her spine enters her skull.
Was the skull complete, like shown in the Science Journal?
Actually, no. They reconstructed it from over 110 bone fragments found over a 30-foot area.
Right. So how did her spine enter her skull from the pieces they found? Because there's not much to go on there. Did they find any neck vertebrae?
Well, actually, again, no. We have no neck vertebrae.
So let me get this straight. So they have no base of the skull. They guessed on where the spine entered the skull, and they have no neck vertebrae?
That's pretty embarrassing, but that's what they're doing. They're just grasping at straws to try and prop up ape men, and they get blown out of the water. Go into my channel and search Ape Man Fraud, you'll be able to see this, but if you want to see the whole talk, it'll be CS 104, Evolution Falsified and Frauds. And I got the digital copy, and you can, there's a good deal on that, but I got a digital copy because I wanted this interview, but I couldn't get it off of there. So Dr. Carl Werner, he sent this clip to me, and just listen to this.
Dr. Ron Clark accused Dr. Tobias of committing fraud. He characterized it as a forgery.
Philip Tobias summoned me to his office, and he said, I want you to make a new reconstruction of STW-53. And I said, oh, why? And he said, well, I'm not happy with the brain size, it's too small. And I said, but that's the way it is, it can't be made any bigger. the anatomy shows that was the size of the brain case. He wanted it to be a Homo habilis. In fact, he kept publishing this as a Homo habilis. He then asked a research fellow that he just appointed there, Darren Kernow, he asked him to make a new reconstruction. And what Kernow did was he separated out this near contact here. He separated it out by 8 millimeters and made this wider. He flexed the parietal occipital contact here. He flexed it upward to make it bigger. He took apart other pieces as well and expanded it, and he moved this frontal bone forward to make it very elongated. It's totally false, because there was no justification for what they did. It was simply Philip Tobias's ambition to make this into a Homo habilis.
And that's what Dr. Carl Werner, he claims to have 150 frauds in human evolution, because he spent 27 years going around taking photographs of fossils and interviewing the people who discovered them. And he's got 5 volumes of books out there and 8 episodes out there. And this is just 10% of the fossils that he could get his hands on. These are the ape men that have been falsified. He couldn't get his hands on the ape men that haven't been falsified. So I'm thinking it's all a big house of cards. This is what they did. They took a chimp hip and they made it bigger so it could be an ape man. There's a lot of money finding ape men, not chimps. Here's another artifact. This is a good site too. On YouTube, TCCSA, that stands for Twin Cities Creation Science Association. And there's some that are broken up into highlights or clips. It's typically an hour-and-a-half talk, but this is just 1 minute from Mike Snavely.
We've known about a large sauropod dinosaur carved into a rock in a national park in southeastern Utah. I had called the national park and I asked when the best time of day to get a picture of it would be. He suddenly blurted out, all right, the item in question is best filmed at 1:30 in the afternoon at the time of year that you're going to be there. But now I've exceeded my authority. I said, what'd you say? You've exceeded your authority? He says, yeah, that's a level 3 artifact. What's a level 3 artifact? So I asked him that. He goes, okay, level 1 is any object in the national park that you can see and you can ask us questions about. A level 2, we will not tell you that it's here, presumably to protect it. We will not tell you that it's here unless you already know that it's here, and then you can ask questions about it. A level 3 artifact, we have to pretend doesn't exist.
Pretend it doesn't exist. Why can't you have a dinosaur carving in your park? Because that shows that people saw dinosaurs. And according to their theory, people never saw dinosaurs. Well, if they couldn't see them, how did they carve them? And they get carved in castles and temples and other places and legends of them all over the world. So there's a lot of evidence that people walked with dinosaurs, but that just blows apart their theory. But yet they find dinosaur blood and dinosaur bone, and that can't last millions of years either. So their whole theory is coming apart. And Dr. Carl Werner, he said, it's an exciting time to be alive. We're seeing evolution fall apart. We're seeing uniformitarianism, that's geology, fall apart. We're seeing the Big Bang fall apart. And we're also seeing, what was the last one? The natural origin of life fall apart. Their whole thing is crashing down. But all they can do now is make it illegal to criticize it. And who knows? Okay, now we're going to move on to the worldwide flood. This will be the classroom thing.
Many flood myths come out of the ancient Near East, and the Bible's account is just one of them.
Well, then how do you explain 14 states in America filled with dead dinosaurs and mixtures of marine life and other animals?
What?
There's an area that's about 1,800 miles long and about 1,000 miles wide, and it's filled in with mud, sand, and ash, which is exactly what you'd expect to find in the case of a worldwide flood.
Those creatures were buried millions of years ago, and their hard as rock fossils prove it.
Hard as rock fossils, right. But there are 120 scientific publications that reveal 16 different types of soft tissue found in ancient bones at every level of the geologic column. Some of these soft tissues, like collagen, only have a shelf life of just thousands of years. So how'd that last for 65 million?
And he said there was 120 papers on soft tissue. If you want to see what those are, go into rsr.org, that's Real Science Radio, and search soft tissue, and you're going to get a link to all those scientific papers. And this is Eric's attempt to explain the worldwide flood.
Welcome to Creation Minute. I'm Eric Hovind. Was there really a worldwide flood 4,400 years ago? Skeptics claim it's all a myth. However, there's overwhelming evidence that indicates the flood really occurred. More than 270 cultures around our world have a legend of the flood. Geologists find massive erosion features all over the world. Coal seams span the entire globe, some of them hundreds of feet thick. On top of Mount Everest, they even find clams. Now, when a clam dies, it relaxes and opens up. These are found in the closed position, 450 miles from the beach, and 5.5 miles above sea level. So was there really a worldwide flood? The evidence says yes. Why don't you let us know what you think at creationminute.com.
There's a lot of evidence for the flood, and now we're going to talk about fossils. And we're passing one around. You can tell your mom and dad, hey, I held a dinosaur bone, dinosaur fossil today. And so let's let Debunked explain fossils.
We've unearthed millions of fossils around the world, so with all this evidence, so to speak, it's clear that the fossil record proves evolution, right? Well, actually, no. Didn't when Darwin was alive, and hasn't since he's been gone. In fact, Chucky D himself knew this when he wrote the following. Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this, perhaps, is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. The explanation lies, as I believe, in the extreme imperfection of the geological record. Okay, but surely after all the time since Darwin, digging and discovering fossil after fossil, we have a more perfect geological record that supports evolution, right? Not even close, bud. Listen to how two renowned evolutionary biologists summarize the truth. Instead of finding the slow, smooth, and progressive changes, they saw in the fossil record rapid bursts of change, new species appearing seemingly out of nowhere and then remaining unchanged for millions of years, patterns hauntingly reminiscent of creation. The fossil record doesn't show gradual change, and every paleontologist has known that ever since Cuvier, or however you pronounce that. Okay, I could go on, but there's always going to be opposing views because on both sides of the debate, the same evidence is interpreted through different worldviews. You got to remember that, people. Facts don't say anything. People say things based on their interpretation of facts influenced by their worldview. But that's a whole other subject, and I don't want to get into it right now. Instead, hey, let's have a little fun and take a look at some popular secular articles and charts on the fossil record and see if we can learn to separate facts from interpretation of facts by asking a few simple questions. Question 1. Did the artiste take any artistic license with what I'm looking at here? Check this out because this happens all the time. Look, isn't that sweet? So cute and fluffy. Okay, why do you think the artist made these creatures appear more human-like by throwing in an affectionate smile and depicting them hanging out like a human family going to a picnic or something? Why did he draw them walking upright? Why make the shapes and colors of their eyes more human than ape? Is any of it based on actual fossil evidence? Of course not. But if you want the story of evolution to appear more convincing, you just might fill in missing gaps with your presuppositional imagination. Just saying. Question 2. Is the attention-grabbing headline or title supported by actual facts? For instance, take a look at this popular book called Why Evolution is True. We don't even have to go any further than the jacket on this one, because on it you got a dino evolving into a bird in 3 simple steps. There you go. But then on the inside, this is written, and I kid you not. The jacket depicts a chronological sequence of fossils showing the evolution of birds. We do not know whether the actual line of descent included, now wait for it, the first 3. Say what now? Doesn't that mean these 3 shouldn't be on the cover then? Which means all you got is a modern bird, right? No evolution, just a bird. Talk about worldview filling in gaps. On to question 3. What do the graphics on evolutionary charts indicate? I mean, they sure do look convincing. For instance, on this one from the dinosaur book, you got solid red columns and white columns showing gradual progression over time. But let's read the almost imperceptible 2-point font over here. It reads, tinted areas indicate solid fossil evidence, which means the white areas represent no solid fossil evidence, right? Okay, then take them away. Uh-oh, looks like patterns hauntingly reminiscent of creation, I'd say, right from their own charts. And the same thing goes for the dotted lines on this one. Look at all of them. Just so we're clear, dotted lines indicate zero evidence. Remove them and what do you get? No transitional forms or evidence of gradual progression. A bat is a bat, a kangaroo is a kangaroo, and a horse is a horse. Of course, unless, of course, the horse is Mr. Ed. Look, people, all I'm saying here is if you got facts, put them in there. If you don't, leave them out. But don't draw downright dubious, daft, dare I declare, dunderheaded dotted lines of deliberate deception, dogmatically and dastardly doodle to disguise definitive data. No, Just admit what you actually see. Overwhelming evidence of living things, according to their kinds, suddenly appearing, which, as a reminder, is exactly what the Bible teaches. Now, I don't even have time to get into TV, movies, and documentaries. All I ask is that you use the same line of questioning when you watch them. And in summary, we agree with Mr. D. Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain. Not then, not now, not ever. And that means the whole idea that the fossil record proves evolution has been debunked. Adios.
Debunked. Yeah, they do good work on that. But again, eat the meat, spit out the bones. I haven't watched all of them, so I'm going to skip ahead to this one. At one time, you were inside your mom's belly, and you weren't breathing air. You were getting all your oxygen, all your nutrients, all was coming from your mom, the placenta. What happens at birth for you to live? This is a doctor, and that's the blood going around. It goes from the baby, and it bypasses the lungs, and it just gets it all from the mom. That's what happens before you're born. But what has to happen for you to breathe air?
Here's the prenatal with its 3 separate loops. Here's the newborn with the one loop that just goes figure 8, back and forth, body, lungs. What must happen? The ductus venosus, the bypass around the liver, has to close. The umbilical vein closes and the umbilical arteries close. A shortcut through the top half of the heart, through the foramen ovale, has to close. Look at the foramen ovale closing. With that increased pressure, that door is going to slam shut. And it happens just about that fast. It takes a few seconds. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, cells grow and the thing is sealed shut. What about closure of the ductus arteriosus, that bypass around the lungs? It goes from this big wide artery down to that ligament. It becomes a ligament over the course of the next weeks. So those 5 things have to happen.
And if they don't happen, you're going to die. And that's supposed to happen just right? It just happened to evolve. There's no way that happened that way. And I told my brother, he's got a dairy farm, and I said, that probably happens in every one of the calves that you delivered too. Just an amazing transformation from inside to breathing air, from in fluid to breathing air. And God had it all set up. And I'm just going to do one more, and then we'll just have a couple of Q&A, a couple of questions to wrap this up. This one I'm just going to because there's a lot of conversation about this, and we need all the information to think for ourselves and not get believe everything blindly.
Climate change heats up the headlines, but is the Earth really getting warmer? Well, sort of. A warming trend existed for much of the 20th century, likely the last 30 to 50 years. But this warming trend leveled off in 1998. Some scientists and many activists claim that humans produce carbon dioxide, which causes global warming. They often point to the famous hockey stick diagram used in the 90s to supposedly prove their point. But research shows that the rise in CO2 actually happened after the Earth's temperature started rising. That means CO2, man-made or otherwise, did not cause the warming after all. And 2 significant changes in climate occurred within the last 1,000 years: the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age. Both changes happened before human industry could have influenced climate. So it's much more likely that climate change occurs naturally. For example, climate physics link fluctuating solar outputs to Earth's temperature. Should responsible citizens blame themselves for global climate change? Science has not yet ruled out human activity as playing a small role, but factors far beyond man drive most or all climate change. But it does matter that we take care of Earth, not because our failures could completely wreck the environment, but because God placed us here to take care of His creation and to know and enjoy Him through the things that have been made. Romans 1:20.
All right, so you've got these sheets. Which one did you like the best? Which one? The Debunked. Yeah, they do a really good job, and they're pretty funny. So you can get entertained. And what did you learn about? You learned about information science, the law of causality, radiocarbon dating, fossils, the age of the Earth. You learned all of that in just a few minutes. And then what I'd like you to do is just watch one video a day. And some of them are less than a minute. Just get in the habit of learning something creation every day, and then make a little list of your favorites. So if that topic ever comes up, you're going to be able to know where to find it and send it to whoever. And let's see, are there any questions? That's a really good question. How did they figure out Lucy was actually a boy? I'm not sure how they did that, because the bones were all beat up. I don't expect that they found any DNA. I don't know. Because typically you can tell with the hips, because the girl's hip is going to be a little wider to carry the baby, and the boy's hips are more straight up and down. And that's one way they can tell from the fossils. But and they can tell by your cells too. If you're a boy, every cell in your body says you're a boy. If you're a girl, every cell in your body says you're a girl. And so there's a concerted effort to confuse people, and that's not God. God's not the author of confusion. And at the Christian school that I know of, the preschooler, she stresses creation and that God made you a boy or God made you a girl, because she knows that's where they're going to be attacked if they go into the public school. So if you're a boy, be the best boy you can. And if you're a girl, be the best girl you can. You know, God didn't make mistakes. Just use what he's given you to glorify him. That was a really good question. Yeah, I'm not sure how they knew that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.